Living on a cruise ship means that our most important possession is not our house key or our car keys, it's this, our passport. And we're going to tell you a little story of how problems with our passports almost got in the way of our life aboard the Villa Vie Odyssey.
But it was those exact problems that actually helped us discover a little-known travel hack that we want to tell you about today. It's the ultimate backup plan, and if you're a serious traveler, you need to know about this.
We've left the United States and we are currently in a city that has just blown us away with its beauty, but we'll get to that in a minute. The whole point of living on a Villa Vie Odyssey is that we can constantly travel from one country to the next.
That's right. We are not on a typical vacation itinerary. We're on a global itinerary that takes us in and out of many, many, many countries for a very, very long time. So we need an immigration process that's smooth, that's predictable, and that we feel good about.
And that's the thing. Our passport really is the key to unlocking this entire lifestyle. If we were to have a problem with our passport, well, our entire dream of traveling on a residential cruise ship would just stop, right?
Exactly. Our passports are very dear to us and we guard them with our lives. We're a little anxious about losing them. But the fact of the matter is, if we did lose them or if something happened to them, it would be a major problem.
Our low-level anxiety regarding our passports recently took a turn for being a bit more real, because our passports, which are the documents that allow for our freedom, became a liability for 3 separate but very difficult reasons.
Yeah, and the first one was just real estate. Most of you may know that the passport has pages on it, and these pages are where individual countries stamp when you come in, and they stamp again when you leave. So you need to have pages in your passport available for them to stamp, or you can't come in and out of the country. And we found that our passports were running low on pages. We had a lot of travel left, so that could have presented a real problem for getting in and out of the countries.
And it wasn't just an us problem. We started hearing from other residents on the ship that they too were experiencing the same problem with their passport of running out of pages. So a lot of people were scrambling to try to figure out what to do to solve that particular problem.
And then a second, more complex problem came along. Some of you may have seen our video. We had an amazing trip to Israel a couple of years ago and had such an amazing time. Check out the videos if you haven't seen it. It was great. But we discovered that some countries will deny you entry if you have a stamp in your passport from Israel. So just having that stamp in our passport could inhibit us from going to some of the countries that we had on our itinerary.
Then there is visa gridlock. There are actually some countries that require you to mail in your passport in order to apply for a visa to enter into their country. And China is typically one of those countries, and China is on our itinerary. Depending upon the port that you're going to in China, they might require us to mail our passport several weeks ahead of time in order to get that visa. Now, Villa Vie Residences, the company, has said that they would try to help us with that, but we tend to not like to rely on third parties in those kinds of situations and try to take care of it ourselves.
So these 3 problems: number 1, not having enough pages on our passport; number 2, potentially having problematic stamps in our passport; and number 3, maybe having to let go of our passport altogether to get visas. Had to step back and say, okay, what else is out there, and how do we prepare for these and other unknown passport disasters that could be coming our way that we wanted to avoid given our world itinerary?
These problems are big enough, but they forced us to start thinking about the bigger picture. What would be the worst case scenario for our passports? Well, it would probably be if we were in a port and our passports got lost or stolen while we were bouncing between countries. That would be the worst thing.
Yeah. And the first concern there is, what's the scramble going to be like to get an emergency replacement passport? Number 1, you got to find the U.S. Embassy. You got to hope everybody's there and it's processing as usual and all that kind of stuff. Number two, you got to make sure you've got enough time in that port to get it done, because the Odyssey's on a journey. So if we didn't have enough time in the port, we'd have to stay in that port, get our passport, and then catch up with the Odyssey once it's all done.
And then there's the basic problem of without your passport, you don't have your main proof of identity. In many countries, the only way to check into a hotel is by presenting your passport. They won't take like a driver's license or anything. So that would be a major problem if you're stuck in a country and you have no proof of your identity and who you are. All of this made us determined to find a real solution for our list of problems. And we did. We did our research and we discovered a bit of a superpower for US citizens. This may be the case in other countries, we're not sure, but it definitely is a possibility in the US. It's the ability to get a second valid US passport. It wasn't just the backup plan. It became this whole other strategy, this whole new strategy for us to use in our travels around the world.
This really was a game changer for us. We were so excited because now we had a solution to the things that we were already dealing with, like we talked about, but also kind of all of those what ifs that we thought maybe looming around the bend. So all of a sudden we had a solution and we could just kind of relax and enjoy ourselves knowing that we had a really solid solution in our back pockets. So that said, we probably ought to let you know where we are.
We are in beautiful, stunning Vancouver, Canada. It really is an incredible place. And of course, in order to get here, we had to put our passports into action. So we're going to show you a little bit about our adventures in the city, and then we'll get back to how we were able to get a second passport. With our extra passport in hand, we got to explore Vancouver. Starting from Canada Place, where the ship was docked, we just set out walking. We walked through the historic streets of Gastown with its great restaurants and then explored Chinatown nearby. The city has this amazing blend of history right next to the super modern shopping areas, all set against an incredible natural backdrop. We also did a little bit of shopping for the cabin. It was the perfect distraction.
So to get back to the actual solution that let us go and just enjoy ourselves in Vancouver, it really came down to having a backup plan, and that was we have a duplicate passport. If something happens and we lose or it's stolen or something just happens and we are without our first passport, we know we have a second one and we know exactly where it is.
This is such a huge strategic advantage. For example, we could send one of our passports off to apply for a lengthy visa application and still hold on to the second passport to continue our travels. That way, we don't have to worry about all the bureaucracy holding us back from continuing to travel on.
It also helps with the Israeli stamp problem, and it allows us to have one passport for certain places and a second passport that lets us go other places without having to worry about problematic stamps inhibiting our travel anywhere. That's a real big deal to have, and it lets us go about our travels the way we want.
And you know, beyond the practicalities of having this extra passport and dealing with these situations, we think the psychological benefits are just really big. It's just one less thing to worry about. I think we're going to have a lot more confidence going forward that no matter what comes up, you know, we got this.
Now, getting a second passport isn't as easy as simply asking for one. But as frequent travelers like us, it's absolutely achievable. We're going to tell you exactly how we did it.
Yeah, first you have to justify why you need one. The State Department doesn't give the second passport to just anyone. You have to have a valid reason. But as residents of the Villa Vie Odyssey and our constant travel lifestyle, we totally have a valid reason.
And next is the how. Now, you'll fill out the standard passport application form. It's called a DS-11. And it's important that you use that form, but it's really important, and what makes this different is that they designate that you're doing this for a second passport. Now, the DS-11 must be accompanied by a letter that you write yourself, simply explaining why you need the second passport. That is really your rationale for why you're filling out the DS-11 again and asking for a second passport.
And in our case, we made our application in person at a passport acceptance facility. We thought it would be easier to just explain this in person. And it worked out great for us. But you could choose to just submit all of your application materials by mail. Now, in that case, you would also have to send in your passport, and it would be locked up for a bit. So you wouldn't have access to it. But you can do that.
Now, the last tip we'll give you is kind of a couple of tips. First of all, ask for the large format passport book. It's the same price as the regular one, but you have to ask for it. And it gives you a lot more pages to get stamps on, which is really important given us being around the world.
Yeah, my last passport, I had the smaller passport.
Yeah.
And I was the one who was really running out of space.
He was.
You had
I
the
had the
larger
bigger one.
passport.
Yeah.
You had a bit more time than I did.
Yeah, I did. So get the larger passport book. Again, it's the same price. And the second thing, and this does cost some more, but we think it's worth it, that is get the passport card. It's a card form of your passport. It kind of looks like a driver's license, I guess, and it's not good for air travel. It is good for land travel between the US and Canada and Mexico and maybe some other things, but it gives you a second form of ID. It is a passport, it's just a card, and it could come in handy a lot of places.
Having a second passport really is an incredible advantage, but it's not a magic wand. It does require a bit more when it comes to organizational skills. You don't want it to create more problems than you were hoping that it was going to solve.
Yeah, so the first thing is you have 2 valid legal passport numbers. So you've got to make sure you keep up with that. So for example, that's totally legal, but you got to make sure that you have updated, for example, your airline loyalty card with the passport number you'll be using. Else you could have one passport number on your profile with the airline and maybe a different one in your hand, which could be problematic.
Also, you have to physically manage 2 different passports now, which might be tricky if you're used to dealing with just one. You might accidentally misplace one or misuse one number when you're supposed to be using the other, and that wouldn't be a good thing. So you have to be very deliberate about it. We also came up with kind of a simple solution for how we manage them. One of the passports we let ship security keep on board, and the other we keep with us either safe on the ship, or we might take it with us when we go ashore and we need them.
The other cool thing we did, and I love this thing, is we got a passport holder. And this is one that really worked for us. We've had a few, and I'm crazy about this one. This is ours. You see it holds both passports. It holds our cards and immigration and stuff, even our international driver's license. It's got a pen in here. But the cool thing that we did, and I love this, is we put an Apple AirTag in it. And so this is just a little card. There are some of these that have its own pocket that just you put the AirTag in. I didn't like that sticking out like that, so I just put this in here and slip it down in here. But this thing is great. So if we ever do misplace this or drop it in the airport or whatever it might be, we've got a shot at figuring it out. I loved this one because it also had a little flap in the back in case you get paper documents. I bought 3 before I settled on this one, and I'm picky. So we'll put this in the Amazon store. We always get folks asking us about it, but I'm real crazy about this one. It's also a small business that I like to support, but it really is great having the security of an AirTag with our passports.
So that's the story of how we solved our passport crisis. It really has given us a lot more security and flexibility on our life aboard the Villa Vie Odyssey.
So what do you think? Is a second passport in your future? Or maybe there's somebody you know that should have this information. Please do share it. Thank you so much for coming along with us. We'd really hope that if you enjoy our content, you'll take this time to subscribe and like. We really appreciate it. And we want to get the word out there. So thanks for coming along, and we'll see you soon.